Uh, I am so sorry for Indonesian regulation that uh, all of the program in Indonesia have to speak in Indonesia, and then I think mostly or even all of the participants here are come from Indonesia, so that's why I will speak in bahasa. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian yang saya hormati, ini kita baru 29 partisipan. Saya mengucapkan selamat datang and join in the seminar. Thank you for join. And then saya kira saya sangat mengapresiasi motivasi dan keinginan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian untuk bisa bergabung di acara ini. Yang pertama yang saya sampaikan adalah kita berada di era global, era Industrial Revolution 4.0, di mana interaksi, komunikasi itu sangat-sangat global. Oleh sebab itu, maka sebetulnya jauh sebelumnya bangsa-bangsa di dunia itu sudah mempersiapkan era ini. Indonesia mungkin sedikit terlambat mempersiapkan era ini. But better late than never. Lebih bagus terlambat, tetapi tidak sama sekali. That's why actually I myself from LLDikti Region 9 focus and then concern how to push all of the university in Indonesia, especially in Region 9, supaya care dan kemudian punya kesadaran bahwa era ini adalah era global dan kita harus bisa menjadi good player in global era. Kita harus bisa bermain dengan baik, bermain dengan cantik. So we have a good participant in era globalization and globalization era. So as a big country in the world, sebagai negara besar di dunia ini, saya kira Indonesia memegang peran yang sangat strategik di dalam pergaulan internasional. Nah, the problem is about communication tools. That's the problem. Not like in Singapore and Malaysia, for instance. Malaysia and Singapore itu sudah sangat-sangat bisa berperan di dalam pergaulan internasional. Itu bukan cuma pemerintahnya, tetapi semua masyarakatnya. Kenapa? Karena mereka sudah lama menganut dan mengembangkan yang mereka sebut dengan second language, bahasa kedua. Jadi Indonesia harus bisa memproklamirkan diri bahwa kita pun harus secara sadar, terstruktur dan terencana untuk bisa memiliki bahasa kedua. Oleh sebab itu, ya we have to start from university. Kita harus memulainya dari kampus dan universitas. Nah, Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, kalau Bapak Ibu pernah jalan-jalan ke luar negeri, di perguruan tinggi besar dunia, sebagai contoh, saya pernah ke Yale University, saya pernah ke Ohio State University, bahkan saya pernah juga ke Ohio University yang dekat dari Columbus to Athens itu only about 1 hour and a half by car begitu. Saya juga pergi ke Northern Illinois University, saya juga pergi ke Flinders University, saya juga pergi beberapa perguruan tinggi besar di Australia, di Jepang bahkan, di Inggris pun demikian. Semua perguruan tinggi besar itu memiliki yang mereka sebut dengan Southeast Asian Study. Memang jadi mahasiswanya itu dipersiapkan untuk mengkaji negara-negara di Asia dan khususnya Southeast. Indonesia itu di situ. Makanya kalau kita mau melihat dokumen-dokumen tua di Indonesia, pergilah ke perpustakaan di perguruan tinggi besar dunia itu. Ada. Saya pernah waktu di Ohio State University, saya membaca koran 1930 di sana. Semua produk dan koran-koran, buku-buku baru dari Indonesia, mereka kolek di sana. Begitu seriusnya mereka ingin belajar tentang Indonesia. Kenapa Indonesia itu menjadi sangat menarik? Karena kita adalah orang bilang Eden in the East. Jadi surga di timur kita itu. Oleh sebab itu semua negara sangat tertarik untuk ke kita. Nah, makanya that's why they prefer their citizen, their community to learn, to study about Indonesia. Nah, itu masalahnya. Ya, Bapak Ibu dan sekalian, Indonesia memang sangat menarik. Orang bilang begini, kalau kita ke Eropa atau ke Amerika, kita tinggal 1 hari, 2 hari di sana, semua makanan khas di sana sudah bisa kita cicipi. Selesai sudah habis. Karena tidak banyak. Tapi coba datang ke Indonesia. Mulai dari ujung Banda Aceh sampai tanah Papua. Itu kalau hanya setahun di Indonesia, tidak akan cukup mencicipi seluruh kuliner Indonesia. Begitu kayanya alam Indonesia itu. Nah, oleh sebab itu semua negara sangat ingin datang. Bapak Ibu sekalian, inilah yang menjadi kemudian tantangan buat kita. Satu, yang pertama tadi, semua negara mengincar negeri ini, ingin datang ke sini. Ingin investasi ke sini. Investasinya hari ini bukan cuma investasi industri secara umum yang berkaitan dengan pengembangan peningkatan ekonomi, tapi juga industri pendidikan sudah masuk ke sini. Bangsa kita, negara kita ini telah memiliki regulasi tentang diperbolehkannya pendidikan atau perguruan tinggi asing untuk masuk ke Indonesia. Mulai dari tingkat kanak-kanak, taman kanak-kanak hingga perguruan tinggi. Itu sudah bisa. Baru-baru ini perguruan tinggi sudah ada regulasinya. Dan percayalah bahwa dari waktu ke waktu itu akan semakin berkembang. Nah, di sisi lain yang kedua adalah karena kita ingin bergaul secara global, maka kita pun harus bisa memiliki komunikasi global. Untuk hari ini, suka atau tidak, mau atau tidak, kita terpaksa harus mengakui bahwa bahasa global yang paling populer adalah bahasa Inggris. Itu sekali lagi, suka atau tidak, bahasa Inggris adalah primadona untuk sebagai bahasa yang bisa kita gunakan untuk bisa bergabung bersama-sama dengan negara-negara lain di dalam era seperti sekarang ini. Nah, oleh sebab itu, Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, maka LL Dikti Wilayah 9, ya, I myself as a head of LL Dikti Region 9, itu benar-benar berniat bahwa semua perguruan tinggi di wilayah ini harus mau menanamkan kepada mahasiswanya bahwa bahasa global itu adalah sangat penting. Nah, bahasa global yang paling global untuk saat ini, mau atau tidak, sekali lagi saya ulangi, itu adalah bahasa Inggris. Nah, ketika ini datang dari Cambridge melalui Cambridge English Assessment yang kemudian dipelopori oleh Britain sebagai kantor atau semacam pemegang kewenangan di sini, maka LL Dikti Wilayah 9 langsung menangkap peluang itu dan kemudian menyampaikan kepada beberapa perguruan tinggi, dan sampai hari ini sudah banyak yang bergabung, bahkan kita sudah sign MOU. Nah, dengan demikian maka ini harapan besar buat saya. Semoga yang sudah bergabung itu menjadi spirit buat yang belum bergabung. Dan teman-teman yang join pada seminar ini juga mudah-mudahan nanti juga akan termotivasi dan kemudian memutuskan untuk join di program ini. Percayalah Bapak dan Ibu sekalian bahwa dengan belajar bahasa kita bisa menguasai dunia. Supaya bisa menguasai dunia, maka kuasailah bahasa dunia. Dan saya ulangi, mau atau tidak, saya pun sebetulnya kurang senang. Tetapi mau apa lagi kita ini? Saya harus mengatakan bahwa bahasa Inggris adalah bahasa yang paling tepat untuk kita pelajari hari ini. Sebetulnya, orang Indonesia sudah banyak pintar bahasa Inggris. Bahkan orang Indonesia yang pintar berbahasa Inggris lebih pintar daripada negara-negara tetangga seperti yang saya sebutkan tadi. Tetapi masalahnya adalah ini belum menjadi kesepakatan kita, belum menjadi komitmen. Jadi orang Indonesia yang pintar bahasa Inggris itu adalah karena datang atas kesadaran sendiri, bukan secara kelembagaan atau bukan diprogramkan secara sengaja terstruktur oleh lembaga negara, termasuk lembaga perguruan tinggi. Saya kira kita tidak perlu menunggu negara mengatakan bahwa Indonesia harus semua wajib belajar bahasa kedua, second language. Mari kita mulai dari perguruan tinggi. Karena kita yang akan paling merasakan dampak dari pergerakan dan perubahan kehidupan era ini. Alumni kita lah yang paling akan merasakan bagaimana dampak dari pergerakan dan kemudian komunikasi global ini. Alumni perguruan tinggi lah yang kemudian sangat merasakan bagaimana dampak dari revolusi industri 4.0 dan revolusi sosial 5.0 itu. Oleh sebab itu, mau atau tidak, sekali lagi, ya we have to start. Walaupun saya katakan tadi terlambat, tapi tidak masalah. Lebih baik terlambat daripada tidak sama sekali. Bapak Ibu sekalian, selamat bergabung di program ini. Nanti silahkan didiskusikan bagaimana caranya, dan harapan saya Ibu Elizabeth supaya bisa menindaklanjuti dengan baik teman-teman yang sudah join, yang sudah MOU, itu akan menjadi best practice yang sangat-sangat bisa meyakinkan kepada the new participant untuk join in this program. Jadi, I do hope, Mrs. Elizabeth, you have to prove to me that this program is what I say. This program can prepare all of the Indonesian, especially a student from LL Dikri Region 9, itu can speak English well as soon as possible, not so long, because we need. This is our need. This is not a wish, but this is a need in globalization era. So, Bapak Ibu sekalian, mari kita membiasakan diri untuk mencintai bahasa Indonesia, tidak melupakan bahasa daerah, tetapi percayalah, we need second language. Kita perlu mempelajari dan mahir bahasa kedua. Selamat sekali lagi. Terima kasih Ibu Rita, Mbak Rita. Ya, terima kasih sekali lagi Mbak Elizabeth, dan terima kasih tadi Pak, siapa yang akan menjadi narasumber hari ini dari
Mr. David, Sir. Ada
Mr. David. Ya. Special express or special to Mr. David. Thanks for joining this seminar, and then I hope that you can can be a good inspirator or inspiring to my friend in this room. So, Mr. David, do your best, and I hope that all of the participants who join in this time can join in our program in LDK Region 9. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Baik, thank you so much, Professor Jas, for opening our webinar today. And Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, kalau saya bisa merangkum apa yang Prof. Jas sudah sampaikan kepada kita semua hari ini di forum yang sangat penting pada hari ini bagi kita, khususnya bagi para akademisi di daerah Makassar dan Sulawesi sekitarnya, bahwa peluang bagi kita bangsa Indonesia itu sebetulnya sangat besar untuk maju dan bersaing dengan orang-orang di negara lain, ya, di negara lain. Dan kita juga sadar kalau ada peluang biasanya juga ada tantangan. Nah, tantangan yang nyata di depan mata adalah bagaimana kita bisa siap untuk bersaing dengan orang-orang yang berada di negara lain, terutama dalam hal komunikasi dulu, yaitu berbahasa Inggris. Dan kami betul-betul mengapresiasi setinggi-tingginya inisiasi dari Prof. Jas bahwa perguruan tinggi di daerah Sulawesi, khususnya di bawah naungan LLDikti Wilayah 9, itu harus betul-betul berstandar internasional. Jadi betul-betul kami apresiasi inisiasi dari Profesor Jas, sehingga pada saat bulan lalu, di awal bulan Oktober, itu kita sudah menandatangani MOU bersama di Aula Gubernur. Jadi kami ucapkan sekali lagi selamat kepada Universitas Megariski, Universitas Mega Buana Palopo, Universitas Pembangunan Indonesia, STIE Amkop Makassar, STIMIK Dipanegara, dan STIMIAPMI sebagai 7 kampus pertama di wilayah LLDikti Wilayah 9 yang betul-betul berinisiatif untuk memajukan para akademisinya. Jadi selamat, congratulations, because now your campus name are already registered in Cambridge University, UK, as Cambridge Preparation Center. Now, as we all see that David is already joining in the room, so before his session, I'd like to introduce David to all of you. So David Bradbury is Cambridge Certified Teacher Trainer. He has been teaching in Indonesia since 1996. He initially worked in Medan, North Sumatra, then moved to Jakarta, where he took his Cambridge CELTA qualification. Over his 10 years in Jakarta, he has taught a wide range of classes and learners. He then became involved in teacher training and took his Cambridge ESOL diploma in teaching English to adults, as what we call as Delta. This certification allowed him becoming a tutor for CELTA, and he worked on this as well as on a number of other teacher training courses. So David today is going to deliver how to teach mixed abilities in large classes for higher education, the problems, and also the strategy. So for David, the time is yours.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good afternoon, everybody. How are you all?
Great.
Okay, has everybody had lunch?
Yep.
Oh, good. So no sleeping. Now, let me just start. And here we go. So we're going to talk today then about teaching mixed abilities and large classes for higher education. Let me just introduce myself. My name is David Bradbury. So as Elizabeth explained, I'm a teacher trainer. So I work on teacher training courses, mostly around Indonesia, but not traveling so much nowadays, but lots by Zoom. But hopefully very soon, traveling around this beautiful country again. So there's a few things I'm going to talk about today. And also, I'm going to ask you at stages to discuss things in groups, in breakout rooms, because, oh my goodness, what does that mean? Because I don't want everyone just to be sitting there staring at the screen, because with this kind of workshop, it's really important there's interaction between all of the participants. And there will be time for questions at the end of today's webinar. If any of you have questions as this training is continuing as well, feel free to send questions using chat. So you can use Alt-H and send me a question, and I'll do my best to answer it. Now, just to start with a question. Okay, we won't go to breakout rooms just yet, but okay, what is a typical class size in Indonesia? How many students are there usually? Anyone? Don't be shy. Okay, thank you. From Pat Ismail, 36 to 40. Okay. Anybody else? How many in a typical class here? Okay, so from Pat Mutamina, we have 25 to 30. From Tamtoy, we have 5. Okay, so quite high numbers. Anybody more than 50? Does anybody teach more than 50 students? 25 to 35 from, okay, from Ratu. Any more? Okay, so about that number. So the answers you're suggesting are from up to about 35, maybe a bit higher. Okay. Imagine you could choose. That's chicken. What do you think is the perfect class size? If you could choose, how many students would you like to have in your class? Is it going to be a big number or a small number? Okay, so according to Pat Ismail, 15 to 20. Yep, 15 to 20 is a good number, isn't it? Because you can, oh, there we are, yes, another vote for 15 to 20. So there's enough students so that there's a good classroom atmosphere, but not so many that it becomes more problematic. Okay, so how many is a large class according to you? Okay, more than 50, definitely large. What's your record, guys? What's the largest class you've taught? Let's see who has the highest number. Okay, so more than 40. Any more? More than 50 is the record so far. Has anybody taught more than 60? Anyone? Well, so more than 40, more than 50. Okay, so some of you have taught some quite large class sizes. And when I visit in universities, especially, sometimes the class sizes are large. And when I've traveled to different parts of Indonesia, again, even for high school, then sometimes there are very large numbers of students. Okay. Now, if we look at, there we are. There are some examples of some large classes. Is that familiar to any of you? Now, what we mean by a large class then, Well, according to Hayes, who wrote this in 1997, it depends. Because in some situations where in some countries class sizes are very, very large indeed, some classes in Africa, for example, there are many, many students in a class, other countries much smaller. So really the answer is, it kind of depends. Depends on the context, depends on the country, depends on the situation, depends on the age of the students as well. Okay, here's a yes/no question for you all. Yes or no? Oh dear. Oh, okay. Oh, 3 yeses. Any more? Mutmainah and Ismail being very active today. Thank you for that. Okay, so some people think then, many people think that large classes means big problems. And, oh, okay, yep, and Ibn Tahir agrees as well. Oh dear, and oh, many people are saying yes. Okay, what I want to do in this webinar today is, first of all, hopefully to convince you that, okay, there might be some challenges, but there are ways of dealing with them. And then I'm going to end today on a positive note about large classes. That's the plan. Now, when we are talking about challenges with large classes, I'm going to divide the problems into 2. Oh yes, there's another yes. So the 2 problems with large classes, first of all, the learners are all different, including different levels. And secondly, there are many of them. So I'm going to break this problem into 2 parts. I'm going to start by looking at the differences and then the challenges and then offering some strategies. And then I'm going to talk about challenges because there are so many students, and then again offer you some strategies. Okay, so that's the plan. But first, let's look at differences between learners then, and the fact they're all different. Are all your students the same? Okay, so I think we can agree that no 2 students are the same, even if they're twins. But how are students different? Hang on, sorry, there's a... Hang on, bing bong, nope. Okay, how are students different? Any ideas? What's different about students? Any volunteers? Okay, oh, we have several answers again from Pat Ismail, thank you. Yes, so knowledge, social background, and interest to learn are 3 things. Okay, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and in the breakout rooms, discuss what is different with your students. And then we'll come back to the main room and then suggest and then share our ideas. Okay, now, let's see how many we are. Okay, there are quite a few of you. So I'm going to put you in groups of about 6. When the message appears on your screen, please click to join the breakout rooms. So discuss with the other people, how are students different? We already have the suggestions, remember, from Pat Ismail, of their knowledge, social background, and interest to learn. Can you think of anything else that's different about your students? Okay, can you all click to join the breakout rooms? And I'll ask you to talk for about 5 minutes. Okay, everyone, can you please click on the message to join the breakout rooms? Thank you. Okay, a few people haven't clicked yet. Okay, everyone, can you click on the message on your screen so you can talk to your friends? Right, still a few people haven't joined. Okay, everyone click to join, please. I'm just going to check and see what the guys are talking about in the breakout rooms.
I think that's all that I can have for now.
Yeah, but I really like the social background one because that sort of covers like a lot of things, both psychologically and also what is that? Yeah, especially the psychology of the student, right? And the characteristics are sometimes also what is that created by the social background, right? If
Yeah.
you, for example, if you live in a family with,
Sure, sure, that is true.
Mhm, that's right. Okay. How long is this breakout room going to be? Or there's no information.
Yeah, there is no.
Okay. But but Ismail, where are you teaching?
I'm a
Where,
new. Currently, I'm in Mega Buana, Universitas
Mega-
Mega Buana Palopo.
oh, so
Whoa!
you're joining from Palopo right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
from my
great.
campus.
Your
Yeah.
camp. Wow, okay. Yeah, these days.
Mr.
So
Aldi,
yes, Ibu Ratu.
I hear Vega Buana is a very good campus now.
Yeah,
They just be a university now, as I know, yeah. But
yeah.
and they have a big good plan for the students
Mm-hmm,
because they always send the student going everywhere
mm-hmm.
for
Like
like
a
what I say in magang. I'm so
internship.
sorry. I'm poor English. I learned English for autodidact.
Self-taught, huh?
Yeah.
Internship. They like to send their students for internship. Where usually?
Usually,
I
the faculty will send them abroad, but
Abroad.
not all of them. I think sometimes they have the time when they will provide
I see.
the internship abroad, but
I see.
maybe just some. But it can help to broaden
Yes.
the viewpoint actually
Yeah,
how we should prepare.
and how how the university facilitate that shows that the university is really really cares about the quality
Yeah,
of
yeah.
learning. So that's commendable. Very good.
Mr. Aldi, they
Yes.
ask for X semester for learn English
Wow,
for use digital. Is
that's great.
if
I mean,
I'm not mistake.
yes. I
Your
mean,
program only 2 semester,
but
but
the
they
is
take
for
X
eight.
semester.
That's great. That means they can cover like maybe 4 levels upgrade
Yeah,
for the students. So
because
A1 plus
because the rector is very smart. Then now, if only 2 semester is not enough, they think that
I,
I hear from her rector. Yeah,
I totally agree. If you want your students to get to, let's say, the level B2 or C1, which is the required level if you want to work or study for a master's or post what's that doctorate degree abroad, yes, you need more than 2 semesters.
yeah.
So that's great if the director has that vision. Lucky to be
Yeah.
a lecturer in that university.
Hello, guys. What are you discussing?
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Makassar is have a lot of rainy now.
Yeah, it's raining all over Indonesia, I guess, nowadays.
Yes, lots in Bali as well. So, what differences are you discussing?
Yeah, go ahead, Pa Ismail.
Okay, thank you. Actually, we just develop what I propose, and we come up with some additional. Maybe we can say it here. Besides the students' knowledge, the social background, and also the interests, we also come up with the privileged access to internet. Okay, especially in this era, and also what is said by Mr. Aldiansa, the characteristic of the student or the personality, especially the one that always have the swing mood. Sometimes it's quite difficult. Yeah, I think that's all the things that we have discussed so far.
Okay, that sounds logical. In a minute, we'll go back to the room, and I'm going to ask some of you to share what you've decided. So, hope you'll be able to share your ideas with the main room in just a minute. I'm just going to check on the other groups. Oh dear, some people I tell you what, let's go back to the main classroom now because some people are disappearing from the breakout rooms and some people are lonely.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just warn everybody. Okay, let's go back to the main room. I'll see you there in a minute. Okay, now that's 26. Hang on. Is everybody back?
Yep.
Yep, that's everybody. Hello again, everybody. Okay, so what differences do you discuss with the other people? Ibu Ratu, can we ask you, can you share with the group what you discussed? Ibu Ratu, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. David.
Okay, can you share with the group what you discussed? About
Can you repeat, please? I cannot hear you because too many. Unmute.
Okay, so what did you discuss with your group? How are your students different? Can you hear me, Ibu Ratu?
She is muted. I don't know.
Yes.
Hold on. Let's. Okay. Well, Ibu Ratu, you are muted. Can you unmute and speak?
Ibu Ratu has become very shy.
This is me, sir.
Yes.
Sir Aldi, this is me, Miss Rahmi.
Okay. Yeah.
Britain.
Yes.
I'm
But
not the part. Yeah.
yes, we are asking Ibu Ratu for her opinion.
Oh, that's okay. Well, let's try somebody else. Any more volunteers? What did you discuss with your groups? How are your students different? Any more? But Ismail, do you want to share some of your ideas? I think you were in the same group, weren't you? And you're on mute.
Oh, they cannot unmute themselves. Sorry, the setting from the Zoom. So let me unmute those who are going to speak. Pak Ismail, all right.
That's very strange. Is that something to do with the settings, Pat Aldi?
Yes, it's the setting. Only the host or the co-host can unmute participants. So let me.
I can ask to unmute, but I can't unmute them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. So let me find Ismail.
What's the solution, Pat? This is strange because the host can mute, but can't unmute. But I think normally it's only the participants.
Oh yeah, they have
So,
to. unmute themselves after we ask them.
Yeah, if you hold the space bar, it unmutes you.
Okay, I think
All right.
I got the access to the microphone now. Thank you. Okay, so from our group, actually, we are at the same group, in the same group with Ms. Ratu as well. And we discuss a lot what make our students different. So the first one is the knowledge or the educational background. And the second one is their social background. And the third one is it can be also put in the same, here we have the characteristic of the student or their personality as well as their interests, because I think that's two things interconnected. And
Yes.
and also the privilege to have the technology or the internet access. I think that's the one of the key point as well in this era, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Why do you say that internet access is so is relevant?
Yeah, we do a lot of online learning nowadays, and when I explain to the students and they have the bad internet connection, and we usually use Zoom, for example, and when they get the connection back to normal, and I ask them, do you understand? And they surprisingly answer, what should I say? I didn't get anything. That's one of the example. I think that's why the internet connection is really, really important nowadays.
Okay, yep, that's a good one, thank you. Oh, sorry, Pat Ismail, while you're there, how did you unmute yourself? Could you just unmute yourself normally?
So he is mute. You are muted again, by Ismail. Can you unmute yourself? Oh, we have to click the ask to unmute for them to be able to unmute themselves.
Oh yeah, it should be the host that let us unmute ourselves.
I see. Well, we're gonna fix that for the next webinar. That's
Yeah.
sure.
I think you can go to the participants and then they have the option there to allow participants unmute themselves. It should be checked.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
the
you.
participant. Okay.
Let me go on. Oh yeah, allow participants to unmute themselves. All right.
Yes, yeah, it should be checked.
Fixed, David. You can ask them to on, and they'll be able to unmute themselves.
Hello, is everybody?
Yes, they can now unmute themselves, David.
Oh, well done. Oh, I'm so happy. Okay, let me just take everything, put everything back. Hang on. Okay, so let's just check. Okay, does anybody else have anything to add about what's different between students? I tell you what, let me just go through the list, which is some of the things that you discussed, and then we can discuss the next point. So there are a lot of important differences between learners. So of course, there's the ability to learn language. Some people have a talent for learning languages, and with other people, it's more of a challenge. There is, of course, what they already know about the language. Some students have more language knowledge than others. Cognitive ability or intelligence is different between learners, but there doesn't seem to be a strong correlation between intelligence and language learning ability. Even people who are not so intelligent almost always learn to speak. Now, some of you mentioned these as well. So cultural background, yes. Attitude towards learning English. Some people don't really, I don't know, why do I have to learn English? And so they don't see the point in learning English. So that can be a big difference between them as well. Then there is their knowledge of the world. If students know more about the world, it's easier to teach them because they know more contexts. We can use different examples. Obviously, if you're teaching children, there's no point in organizing a lesson about the environment because they don't know and don't care because they're only children. And gender, obviously students are of different genders. They have different personalities. Their confidence varies, as does their motivation. And as some of you mentioned earlier, they have different interests. Now, do all of these things cause problems? What problems can they cause? So, thinking about those differences between the learners, what problems can they cause, and what are possible solutions or strategies? Now, have you all taught classes with different levels of learners? Have you all had classes with different levels of learners? Any more? Have you? Only one yes? Are you sure? Only one yes? Sounds a bit suspicious. Well, I'm going to look at some of the ways, excuse me, that these things can affect or cause challenges with learners in a classroom. I'm going to start by looking at what I mean by each of these problems, and then I'm going to ask you for some ideas about possible strategies. Now, with language learning ability, obviously, some students, it's easier. Maybe some of you were good at learning languages at school, so some people are good, some people are not. And also, some people know more about languages. They know different tenses, they have different vocabulary knowledge. So again, that makes a difference in the classroom. And the other important one is cognitive ability. So students with reduced cognitive ability or lower intelligence might have problems processing and retaining the information that we teach them in class. Some of you mentioned earlier about the cultural background. And of course, even within Indonesia, because Indonesia is such a huge country with thousands of islands, with different tribes and ethnic groups, so there's a lot of diversity even within this one country. Again, as I said earlier, some students don't understand why they need to learn English. Sometimes students say, for example, oh, but I want to work in conservation, or I want to work in an industry where I don't need English. But of course, because of ASEAN, the ASEAN Free Trade Area, it's becoming more and more important. People are moving to different countries, working in different countries. So it's becoming more and more important, really, for everybody to learn English. And as I said before, some students know more about the world around them, so we can use more examples and contexts when we're teaching English. Okay, gender Obviously, there aren't differences in intelligence or anything like that, but we need to be careful about topics. If we're choosing the topics, often girls are more interested in one thing, boys are more interested in other things. Personality. Some students are very quiet and don't want to speak, but some are much louder. And of course, part of that is confidence. If they're confident, they try to speak more. If we let them speak more, they develop well, but maybe the other students might be adversely affected. Okay, so given those differences, what do we need to do? What are the solutions? So particularly with different levels of students, what strategies do you use in class to deal with different level students? Send you all a message. Okay, any ideas? What do you do when you have students, some who are high level and some who are lower level? Any ideas? Because in a minute I'm going to put you in breakout rooms again. Okay, so a couple of useful things. Absolutely. Yes, at first, trying to identify the student's ability is really important. You need to know how weak or strong they are. Something that Pat Ismail has suggested is differentiate the task given to them, and that's something we're going to discuss in a minute. So, like before, in breakout rooms for 5 minutes, talk to the other people. What strategies have you used with classes with mixed level students? Okay, can you all join the breakout rooms and share your strategies for mixed level students? Can you all click to join? Everyone please click to join the breakout rooms. Okay, Bu Aulia and Norahmi, please can you click to join? Ibu Sukmawati is all alone. Everyone, can you please click to join? Okay, so we had a few useful ideas from the different people in the rooms then. Okay, would anybody like to start first with some solutions that you discussed?
Yes, Mr. David.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, we have a discuss to how to make a level for the student, and then for me, sometimes I make a separate first. I make a little bit exam, for example, how to um for example, if they are a low class and the middle class, and then the other group is the same, it means we hope they have a confidence how to speak or how to learn, and then the other can what I say make an adaptation with the low, and then it's more important for me to make all the group is like have a big motivation. That's
Yes, I agree with you. Motivation is really important. Yes. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? What did you discuss with your friends in the breakout rooms? Any other comments or suggestions?
Well, Hamrin shared a good point earlier in our breakout room. Maybe Hamrin can share to the group.
Please go ahead, Pat.
Hamrin.
Pat, you're still on mute.
Yes. Well, let me share it then, because I was in a group with him and also Ismail earlier, David.
Go ahead.
So we came up with we discussed the idea of uh, overcoming the problem of mixability in the classroom through like grouping
Okay.
students. So having a strong student in the class grouped up with weaker ones, or the one that's lower achieving than the strong ones. The strong students can help the weak students in understanding the lessons in a group project or a group discussion. So they can help us as sort of an assistant, a teaching assistant in the classroom. So that's one way of dealing with it, and at the same time, getting some benefit from the mixability situation.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. I agree with you. And in fact, that's something I'll be covering in just a couple of slides. So thank you for that. Okay. Any final other ideas before we discuss these different solutions? Well, let's just have a look at some ideas. So remember, we're talking about how to deal with teaching a class where the learners are at different levels. So we remember as well, oh, hang on, let's just go through this. So maximizing student interaction is really important. Students need to give a chance to talk to each other, not just to answer short questions from the teacher, which means we need to ask open-ended questions, not just yes-no questions or one-word questions, questions that ask the students to express their opinions. We need to involve all of the students. It's important that as teachers, we look very carefully around the room and make sure that everybody is involved all the time, that the boys aren't asleep at the back and the strong students only are answering. Remember, when we ask a question, we need to give students time to answer, because when an English question goes in their ear, remember there's a lot that happens before English comes out of their mouths. Remember, they need to think about or listen carefully to the question to understand it, convert it into their own language, think of the answer to the question, and then decide how to say that in English, then work out how to say it and finally say it. So we need to give students time to answer. I'll talk about variety in more detail later, but variety is really important in mixed ability and large classes. And it's important that we encourage the students to work together, because it takes the focus away from the teacher and makes the lesson more interesting. Now, we talked about grouping earlier. Certainly pair work and grouping are both very important. And when you're teaching a large class of mixed ability, it's important to think about the groups in advance. You might know, for example, that one student works well with another student, so make sure that you pair them. You know that two students don't work so well together, so don't pair them. So think about the grouping in advance. Now, what Pat Aldi said about grouping together perhaps different abilities, obviously we need to be sensitive, because we don't want the students to think that we're grouping them with the low-ranking students. So we do need to be sensitive. But weak and strong pairs or groups are really useful, as we just heard, because the weak students learn from the strong students can help, and we just heard the phrase like a teaching assistant. They also benefit from that, because the skill of explaining things to people is a useful English language skill. The skill of paraphrasing, using other words and other phrases, is a useful skill. Mixed pairings help the weak and the strong students. And of course, we need to vary the groups. We don't want the stronger students all the time having to explain things to the weaker students. So sometimes put the stronger students together. It's important to mix the groups and vary it. Oh. Wait, can you just wait 1 minute while I... Oh, yes. Okay, Pat Aldi, I'm just thinking about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hang on, just give me 30 seconds. Okay, so there's always a solution to everything. Now, a couple of other things as well. So grouping is really, really important with mixed level classes, mixed level and with large classes. As I said before, we need to think carefully about the tasks for mixed level classes. And one useful strategy, and a couple of people mentioned this earlier, is open-ended tasks. And an open-ended task is where everybody does the core task, but there are extra tasks for the smart students. And that way everybody finishes at the same time. For example, if you're teaching the simple past and you want to do the usual trick, write 3 things you did at the weekend, you can say write at least 3 things you did at the weekend. Then the slower students can write their sentences. Any situation where you have a mingling activity where the students are asking each other questions, then you say you must talk to at least 4 students, but you can talk to more if you like. So there's a core task for everybody, but for the smart students, they can then, excuse me, they can then do extra tasks. So another couple of solutions for large classes is making changes to the activities that we design. And what we mean here is individualization, and that way the different students do the task in different ways, and also personalization, where we focus the student on the student's own lives and experiences. And I'll just talk a little bit more about each of those. So individualization, where we have the same task, but they do it in a slightly different way, depending on their level. And there are 2 ways. So the first way is that they will have the same material, but do different things with them. For example, you can give students a reading text, and you can give the smart students more difficult questions where they need to use reasoning and logic and deduction, and the weaker students, you can give them easier questions where, for example, they have to find how many people are mentioned in the story or what city they went to. So less challenging questions, so nothing about inference, for example. And the other way is that they have different materials but use them the same way. So you might give a simple text to one student and a more difficult text about the same thing to another student, but they have the same questions. Okay, so there are 2 ways with individualization. When we talk about personalization, we mean that the students talk about their lives. Now, this makes it easier because if you say to students, write a story about a boy called Buddy, they don't know anything, they have to think about all of the concepts and invent a story. If you ask the students to discuss or write about themselves, it's easier because they know the story, so they can focus 100% on the grammar and the language that they have to produce. And again, if it's open-ended, we could say, for example, write at least 150 words, but higher level students can write more words. So again, it's our friend, the open-ended task. So with different levels, we need to think particularly about grouping and tasks. Those are the 2 most important things to focus on. And as a couple of people mentioned earlier, yes, in some cases, you do need to know which are your higher level students and which are your lower level students. But an open-ended task, it's kind of more, it's kinder to the students because you are giving everyone the same task. You're not kind of separating the tasks out by using things like individualization. Okay, now we also said there are other differences. So with motivation, of course, we need to provide interesting materials. So if you give your students 500 words to read about the history of chairs, all your students will go to sleep. So it's important that the English that we teach is relevant to the students' daily lives now or their lives in the future. So it would be crazy to have a lesson where the students write a telex, for example, because nobody uses telexes anymore. For young people as well, email is less important, but will still be important in the future. So we need to make that clear. It needs to be clear to students why they're learning what they're learning. And again, one example was somebody once said, oh, look, you know, my family are, I just want to work as a fisherman. How will I ever use English? But the international language of radio communication is English. And again, because of what's happening with ASEAN, English is becoming more relevant. So everybody can benefit from learning English. So it needs to be topics that are familiar with students. It's a waste of time asking your students to write about Los Angeles, unless they've been there. So change subjects to make them more relevant. And it's also important to be aware that even within this country, some things are not relevant to some people. It's not just culture, but obviously every part of Indonesia has its own different culture. So some things are familiar to students and some things aren't. So again, with male and female students, we need to find subjects that are relevant to both. Classroom management is really, really important with mixed ability classes so that all the students join in with the lesson. And remember, low-level students need praise. When you're giving praise to students, praise them for trying, praise them for being nearly correct, and praise them for being correct. It's important to raise their confidence. So basically, of those, the most important are motivational and interesting material, praising students, and also with the topics, remember, lead in so the students can anticipate what's happening. Oh, they're not my students. So, mixed level classes, then think about the students, focus on the grouping, focus on the tasks and changing the tasks or adapting the tasks. Any questions so far about mixed level classes? Remember, if you'd like to send a question by chat, I'll be happy to answer it.
Yes, please feel free to ask your questions, ladies and gentlemen. You may unmute yourself or you may write your questions in the chat box.
Just wait 30 seconds to see if any questions come.
Can I ask question, please? Okay, thank you. but maybe what you explain is up in the context of we have the normal classes. And there is a tendency, I don't know what it is true or not, but maybe in the future we will still have chance to adapt using online learning in our lessons, especially in the university level. So there is one thing that I always face when I have a class is the time. Yeah, uh, I I this is a personal experience that I have so much uh, material that already provide so many things that I provide for my students. But when we have the online session like this, uh, we cannot rely on the plan, and there is always time spent on technology or the internet issue, and that's always big. At the end, we end up that we didn't get the objectives of our learning. And I think in this context, it's quite difficult to do most of these in terms of giving how to say grouping, just like we have the uh, breakout room. It didn't work actually because some of them have a bad internet connection, and then um, yeah, I think I just want to ask, do you have any idea about how we manage the time when we have the online class? Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So sorry, Pak Ismail, your sound faded a bit at the end, but your point is valid. Online teaching is a different kind of thing. Now, a lot of the things I was saying earlier are really applicable to both. Online learning does take more time. When we're planning for online learning, we really need to think about, okay, which parts of my lesson do I need to do face-to-face? What can the students do before? And what can the students do after? And there are many online resources, either using existing resources where you can set the students' activities, or websites you can build activities for the students like H5P. So basically with the lesson plan, you need to think, for example, if the students are doing a reading activity, then could they do that before the lesson and then only ask about the bits they can't do during the lesson? With things like writing, the students again can do that in their own time. When you're teaching vocabulary, again, send the words to the students in advance and say, okay, do you know these words? If you don't know these words, then look them up. And then in the lesson, tell them, I will ask you to, in the lesson, to make a sentence with some of these words. And if they know that, they have an incentive to actually do the work. So that's really the important thing, Pat Ismail. We need to decide what's most effectively done in lesson time and what's most effectively done before the lesson or after the lesson. Because you're correct, it does take more time. Breakout rooms takes time to set up, to move between the rooms. The technology sometimes takes time. Sometimes the internet stops working. So it does all tend to waste time. Yeah, that's really the secret. What can they do in the lesson, or what do they have to do in the lesson, and what can they do before and after?
Thank you.
Okay. By the way, Pat Ismail, I can't hear you anymore. Is there a problem with the sound your end?
I think I just want to say thank you so much for the answer. Can you hear me?
Okay, something strange has happened. Anyway, let's move on with fingers crossed. Okay, I'm going to move on then to talk a little bit about the second thing. So we're talking today about large mixed level classes. So we'll look at both of these. I've been talking about mixed level, and let's go on to talk about many learners. Now, obviously, if there's both of those things, it's a large class and there are different abilities, then there's a lot of extra things to think about as teachers. So some of the problems, okay, what problems are there if you have a class of 60 students? What problems have you experienced if you teach 50 students in a class, for example? Can I have some replies on chat, please? Yep, okay, checking their task, checking what they're doing. Any more? Any more problems?
Okay.
Okay, checking they understand is really important. Yes. What else? Okay, so let's just have a look at a couple of these. Just give me 1 minute. Sorry, just give me 30 seconds. I just need to fix the thing. Okay, yes, of course. Well, internet access is going to be a problem for different types of classes anyway, especially, of course, online. Okay, let's look at some of the problems that appear. Okay, so we have, of course, some students don't participate. We know that's a problem, especially the boys hide at the back. Yes, motivation is a problem as well. Well, I agree with that. Okay. Things take longer if there's a large class because we need, for example, to pass around handouts. We need to check with more students. Yes, it is difficult to monitor what they're doing, especially if it's a large class and you can't access everywhere. Okay. There's a problem with the stronger students dominating the class. There's a problem with maintaining discipline, especially with younger students. Oh my goodness. Because there are more students, we have less time for each of them. Yes, I agree with that one as well. Thank you, Patrick. And finally, in my list, because there are more students, it's difficult to put them all in groups. Okay, so what can we do with all of those problems? Oh my goodness. Now, just for a couple of minutes, okay? Let's think. What solutions are there to those. Oh, okay. So, can anyone think of any solutions to any of those problems? What do you do when this happens in your class? Anyone? Any solutions at all to these large class problems?
Maybe for the problem of some students not participating, David, maybe we can like design the activity so that each member of the group that we set them to be in have a specific task. So each of them will have things that they will be responsible for on their own.
Yes, I agree. Once again, task design is really, really important for large numbers of students. So that, especially so that everybody knows what to do and so that everybody has something to do. Yes, thank you. Any more from chat or voice? Well, let me just offer a couple of solutions to these, well, not solutions because we're using challenges, not problems, but let's discuss a couple of strategies for when there are large numbers of students. Now, yes, when students, the problem with these, when students are not concentrating, it's because they're bored or don't know what to do. Okay, so with that in mind, if we look at these problems, so students not participating, yes. Remember, one really important thing to do with students not participating is to use smaller groups. If the students are in pairs, they must participate, otherwise they're just sitting there in silence. So if there's a competitive element where there's some kind of winner or they have to get the most or the fastest, that motivates them to compete. But pair work or small groups is really important. The problem with large groups is that students can just sit silently. So if it's a small group, then it's more difficult for them to keep silent. Okay, activities take longer. The problem sometimes with large classes, and I've seen this before, is too much time is wasted with classroom administration. Now, first of all, from the start of the class, there's taking the list of students who are here and who are absent. But even things like distributing handouts can take too long, which means use the students to help. So they can give out the materials. You can also ask the stronger students to monitor. Remember the, even though some students finish early, remember that additional activities are important as well. So large classes, mixed abilities. Some students are going to finish earlier. Get them to monitor the other students. Remember again how important open-ended activities are. Now, again, get the students to help. Students, large numbers of students, it's difficult to focus on or to watch what they are all doing. So checking and making sure they understand the lesson, as we heard earlier. Monitoring is difficult with large numbers of students. Again, use the students, but also don't let activities last too long. If activities are lasting too long, students are demotivated. And then, if we're talking about stronger students dominating, once again, small groups. Decide in advance who works with who. Small groups are the key to helping everyone to participate. Let's talk about a couple of strategies about keeping the students' focus. Pace. Pace is really important. Again, with large classes, if the students, for example, if you're giving feedback and the student number one, okay, buddy, one, where did the man live? The man lived in Bogor. Good. Mary, number two, where did they go? They. So keep the lesson moving. Don't ask the students to read out loud because everybody can see what's written in front of them. Don't ask the students to read the question, just the answer. Don't spend a long time with things like feedback because it's very boring for the other students. But in the lesson, listening to other students read is one of the most boring things. Don't do it. It doesn't help anybody because it's not natural reading anyway. So things need to keep moving. Plan things carefully. Don't waste a lot of time. When the students are passing the handout around, for example, do something, talk to them, ask them questions. Keep the lesson moving. The problem with the attention of students in large classes, if you lose their attention, it can be very difficult to get it back. So pace is really important. It's also important to keep eye contact. So when you're asking a question, even if it's a big room, then make sure you're looking around the room and you're making eye contact with the students. If somebody isn't paying attention and you know their name, always use their names because names are always more effective than saying you. But eye contact is really important so they know you're watching them. When you have a large class, ask the students questions all the time. Can you give me an example? What's the answer to that? Why do you think she did that? Ask the students questions and ask them randomly and ask them to the whole class sometimes, but also to particular people. And again, plan those questions in advance. Asking questions is really important. And there needs to be variety. There needs to be variety of a lot of different things. There needs to be variety of skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing. There needs to be variety of tasks. So writing, gap fill, multiple choice, speaking, quizzes. Variety of seating, move the students around if it's possible. Variety of feedback. Sometimes do oral feedback. Sometimes the students write on the board. Sometimes the feed-out is in a handout or an email. And vary who talks to who. Sometimes pairs, sometimes groups. And I'll show you a picture of this in a minute. So variety is really important to keep lessons moving. As I said before, maximize student interaction. So maximizing student interaction so the students are not just passive in the class. They need to answer open-ended questions, not just yes-no questions. All students need to be involved by careful grouping. The students need to have time to answer. Remember, if as a teacher we answer the question too quickly, that will tell the students, oh, just be quiet, and then the teacher will answer the question for you. That sends the wrong message to the students. Again, as I said before, vary things. And if you can, and if it's possible, sometimes go and sit among the students, because it changes their dynamic of the class. It's not you at the front and the students down there. So just by standing in a different place or sitting in a different place can really change the dynamic, and of course push the students to work together. I don't know the answer to number 4. Okay, Buddy, can you help? So encourage that kind of thing as much as possible, promoting student-student interaction. So that's the next one. So discipline and concentration. Just remember how you were at school in those long, boring lessons on Friday afternoons. What made them boring? Because the teacher was just there, blah, 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 and the students were all there. So don't do that. Okay, let's just look at, okay, there is less individual attention for students in large classes, which is why it's important to group them and monitor. In large classes, it can be difficult because it takes more time because there are more of them. So you can use these seating arrangements to define the groups. So, for example, you can have the students in pairs working together. They can work together with the people behind them, and then a group here, and then people behind them, and then this group here. Or you could have 2 groups in the front row, and then again, they can work with people in front or behind. So don't always just have the students working in pairs with the person next to them. They need to talk to other people. Okay, and one useful way of saving time by grouping students is making cards like this. So this is just for a class of 36, and every student, as they go into the class, takes a number. Now, this means that when you put the students in groups, rather than, which takes a long time, you can say to the students, okay, everybody green, so work with students with the same color card. All the yellows together, all the greens together, all the blues together. It's very quick. You can group them by number, all the 1s, all the 2s, all the 3s, all the 4s. You can group the students by odd or even numbers. So all the even numbers together, all the odd numbers together. Or you can use combinations. So all the yellow and green students together, all the pink and orange students, or tell them to work with somebody with the same color, but a different number, or different color, same number. So again, there are many combinations, but it's much quicker. Again, what I said about pace, for large classes, it's very boring for students if they're waiting for you to put all of the students in groups. But by saying all the 2s, all the 4s, all the 6s work together, it's much quicker. And they can just walk around holding their card, and it saves time when they're moving around. Slow classes are boring classes. Keep the pace up. Okay, any questions so far? Well, let me just summarize the large classes then. So large class is a relative concept. It depends on the context, how you define a large class. And of course, some of these problems are the same for small classes as well. And some of the solutions are also effective. But there can be many opportunities for teaching and learning. A large class doesn't necessarily have a negative impact on teaching efficiency. And in my opinion, we need to think about large classes from a different perspective. Which means, of course, it means developing effective ideas for dealing with large classes and effective strategies that work for your students. Okay, so again, remember what I said, think about grouping, think about monitoring, thinking about eye contact, about keeping the class moving. But just to finish, let's think positive. Okay, can you think of any advantages of large classes? Anyone? You're being positive.
Maybe we can get a lot of ideas from the students.
Okay. Remember, would you like to teach, for example, a class with just 3 people in the class? That might not be much fun. So there are definitely advantages. Okay, while you're thinking about that, Baharudin has just asked, yeah, I agree, Joseph, has asked how long we should teach the students. The length of the lesson pack, it depends a lot. Really, in my opinion, 2 hours is about the maximum realistic length for a class, and 1 hour is probably the minimum. Otherwise, it wastes, there's too much time with the administration. So between 1 and 2 hours would be my recommendation as the most effective length. Okay, let's continue with the positivity. So just a few things. Yes, I agree with the comment and what we heard. First of all, there's more energy in the class. You know, there's more atmosphere, there's more movement, there's more dynamism. So in an afternoon, personally speaking, I'd much rather have a dynamic class where people are making a bit of a noise, they're perhaps moving around, because it makes the lessons more interesting for everyone. With a large class, there is always somebody who is, it's much more likely if you ask a question, there's somebody who wants to answer. So always somebody who is prepared to put their hand up. So if you're asking questions, for example, they have more background knowledge, which means more ideas. Yes, the students have more experiences they can bring to the classroom. If you are discussing cities and you ask your students, okay, has anybody been to a big city, or has anyone been to Jakarta? You're teaching 3 students, probably not. If you're teaching 50 or 60 students, there's a much bigger possibility that somebody will say yes and they can talk about it, which puts the focus on the students. So they bring more to the classroom, they have more ideas. And this is kind of related to colourful situations, there is more variety. So this can be a positive thing because students can work with different types of people. So again, it makes the class more interesting for people. We wouldn't like to just talk to the same person every week in the class for 3 years. So having more variety of people in the classroom makes the lessons more interesting. So although we've said that, okay, there are some challenges with large classes, there are some challenges with classes with different abilities. However, for the mixed abilities, there are strategies, particularly with the design of grouping weak and strong students and with the way we organize tasks. For large classes, the important thing to remember is especially pace and keeping the class moving. But again, there are strategies, and to both of these, there are definite advantages to having lots of students in the same room. There's a lot more things happening, and as long as we can manage the class effectively so the students know what to do and the students are involved, then large classes can definitely be an advantage. Okay, so that's about my conclusion today. Does anybody have any more questions about large classes or different levels? Again, you can send them by chat or just talk to me.
Yes, so if anybody has any question, we will use these last 5 minutes of David's session to have a free question and answer session. So even if it's not directly connected to the topic that David just covered, feel free to ask.
It's a dangerous thing to say, but Aldi, there might be questions about history.
Well, we'll put a test on your history knowledge. Okay, Bapak Ibu, please. Okay, well, if you have any questions later on, then feel free to share it to the staff. It's probably Miss Nining or to the contact person that we will share later, and we will forward it to David so he can help with the with the answer later on.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, David. So I think you may close the session, David.
Okay, so I'd like to say to all of you, thank you for joining today. Thank you to those of you who asked questions and who made suggestions. It's always a pleasure to meet and work with different teachers around the country. So I'd like to finish then by wishing you the best of luck with teaching large classes with different levels. Don't give up. Sometimes it can be hard work, but there are strategies, and when it works, it's a nice feeling. So don't give up, and it's just a really nice way of growing as a teacher as well, to teach large numbers of people and to be able to help them all. So I'll finish by wishing you good luck with using what we discussed today. I'd also like to wish you all to stay healthy, keep wearing those masks and washing your hands, and we're approaching the end of this situation, so we'll get through this together. Yes. And who knows, one day I will meet some of you face to face in a classroom somewhere.
Yeah, looking forward to that, David. Thank you very much, David. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Pat. Would you like me to end the session, or will you, or shall I just leave?
Yes, you may give us the host. Yes.
Okay, so...
Okay.
Okay, in that
Okay,
case,
thank you so much, David.
You're very welcome.
Best of luck.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, Pat, Aldi, shall I end the meeting?
Yes, go ahead.
Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.